Greetings and welcome to the International Pediatric Simulation Society podcast. This show is for people passionate about pediatric simulation-based education, training, and research. Podcast hosts are members of IPSS, a global community of multidisciplinary healthcare professionals from over 30 countries, all dedicated to improving the care of infants and children worldwide. Each week, one of our sub-hosts, Christine Bailey, Elaine Ng, Aaron Karn-Bennett, and myself, Samreen Vora, will introduce you to a new guest and bring you into a conversation with simulationists and healthcare professionals from across the world. Come along. Hello, Dr. Samreen Vora here. Welcome to this episode of the IPSS podcast. Today, we will be talking with Brittany Dahlen, the current president of IPSS, and Dr. Rana Sharara-Chami, the president-elect. Brittany Dahlen is a master's prepared critical care nurse and education specialist. Dr. Rana is Pediatric Critical Care Medicine section chief at Inova Children's Hospital and an associate professor of medical education at the University of Virginia Inova campus. She's also the PICU Fellowship Program Director. Both of them will be sharing about their journey to IPSS leadership roles and what's to come for the society this year. All right. Welcome, Brittany and Rana. I am so excited to have you on this episode of the IPSS podcast to learn more about both of you and your goals and dreams for the IPSS community. So we're going to just jump right in and start chatting. I'm really excited to have both of you here.
Thank you, Samreen.
You're welcome. I'm so excited. So maybe I can just have each of you share how and when you joined the IPSS community. And Brittany, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. So I became involved, I believe, in like 2016, and it was somewhat new to simulation, and some of my mentors had really recommended it as a great place to get to know people in the simulation community. And I got to go to Amsterdam and really get to know all the people, get to know fellow nurses, which was really cool in simulation, and got some amazing mentorship as I was starting out my career in professional development. And it was awesome to have such a welcoming place to kind of build up that aspect of my career.
I love it. Amsterdam was, I think, my first IPSS as well, and I remember it well.
Yeah.
I know, Rana, for you, you've been around much longer than either of us. Can you share with us how and when you joined IPSS community?
Yeah, you made me sound so much older. Maybe I am. I'm
No,
just
not
in
older.
denial.
No, more experienced.
Actually, my first IPSS was in Toulouse, in France. I want to say this was in 2013. I had trained with one of the very founding people of IPSS, Dr. Peter Weinstock. I trained with him at Boston Children's, and that's when I got introduced to simulation, actually. It happened that I went back to my country where I'm from, which is Lebanon, at the end of 2010. And I had been doing, believe it or not, but basic science research up until then, looking at sepsis in the ICU in a mouse model. And when I went back to Lebanon, I realized that people don't need bench research. They need groundbreaking education. So I decided to somewhat revamp my interest, and I went back to Boston in 2011 or 2012, where I did a simulation course. And then I went back a year later, I did a refresher course. I was encouraged by Peter Weinstock. Ella Scott was then the president, to join IPSSW in Toulouse, in France. And I've been hooked since.
I love that part. You've been hooked since you are addicted to IPSS. I love that. I didn't realize you had done bench research with little mice before. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm really excited that you joined the IPSS and the simulation community. And 100% right. The contributions I think you've made in really moving the science forward, it's been really, really great to learn from you too over those years. So I am excited to know that both of you, with your depth of experience, are now part of this, part of the leadership of IPSS. And I'm curious to hear how you took that leadership path in becoming the president of the society and the president elect of the society, and also how that's impacted you professionally and personally over the years in your growth and journey.
Again, as I mentioned, when I joined IPSS years ago, I was not even a member, like I was a participant. And I didn't know that this is where my career is going to lead me. And I ended up over time joining IPSS as a member. And I started just attending conferences. Like most people, presented some abstracts, some posters, some oral themes. Ended up meeting some people at IPSS in Vienna. That's where I met Frances Ulmer, who is one of my co-researchers. And through Frances and Ella, we met Peter Diekman, who is very well known in the world of simulation. And given that we literally each came from a different culture, we just talked about simulation and debriefing. Because when I went back to Lebanon after having trained in the US, I realized that the same method of debriefing did not work. Lebanese tend to be very outspoken. They tend to be very opinionated and not follow structure necessarily. So I had to tailor the way all the scripts, that are written in the West are done for debriefing. And I was discussing this with Peter Diekman and Francis, and we came up with some research ideas that we pursued. Throughout all of this, I started presenting workshops at IPSS with Peter and with Frances. There was a committee that actually targeted especially international advocacy. So I joined that committee just from being a member at IPSS because I was coming from Lebanon at the time. And I just started growing through, in the organization from IDAC, which was the original name of this committee, to a meeting organizing committee that I co chaired and I still am with different people. And then I came back to the US because of life reasons, geopolitical reasons in the Middle East. So I relocated to the US, and that's when I really started giving more time to IPSS, giving even more time to IPSS. I joined the board. I was nominated by someone to join the board, and as a board member and meeting organizing committee member, and having been a member at IPSS for so long, I was also nominated as the president and voted as the president elect. So exciting journey, but it's a lot of words to say that people can start just being participants at IPSS and grow all the way to eventually becoming presidents, no matter where they're from.
That's exactly what I got from that was a great summary of what you said, because that's what I got too. I was taking notes and I thought, "Oh my gosh, I love that you started with saying, you started as a participant," because I know a lot of people can feel intimidated when they first join a society, especially when there's folks that, and you mentioned some of those names of folks that are just founding members of a society or founding members of the work that's being done in simulation. It can feel intimidating, but to come on as a participant and then to hear your journey as you progressed on that road is really great, humbling, but also makes it look like it's possible for anyone who's interested to connect with others who have similar interests as you. Brittany, well, what was your journey like?
I'd say there's some overlap and intersection with what Rana shared. Given that I was starting out in simulation and very new to the field, I was really pleasantly surprised that people were just really open and giving of their time and just willing to kind of sit and chat. sometimes I wouldn't even necessarily know who the person was until we get halfway through a conversation. Then I'm like, oh, I'm talking to somebody that I read their paper, and
I love that.
Rana actually being one of them. I
Yeah.
was, pretty psyched to be like, oh, I've read her paper on cultural differences and debriefing. Like, so, you get to be that sponge and then also realize that you have value to add. That's what I think a shift that happened for me, even pretty early in getting involved, is one of our former presidents, Lydia Lofton, actually came up to me during one of the conferences, I think in Amsterdam. I had attended some of the committee meetings just to check them out, see what they were all about, and if I could get involved. And had voiced that I'm really passionate about nursing and allied health and having interprofessional simulations because, we work together every day to care for families. So why not do the simulations together? And it was great because Lydia was like, don't be, intimidated. People would love to hear your ideas and you have expertise. And I was like, I don't have expertise. She's like, yes, you do already. So, that I think was a huge piece of just like breaking down that hierarchy was just kind of a norm across members. I think when it just wasn't about titles, it was more about, we all are really passionate about making simulation better and making patient care better ultimately. So, yeah, I started out in the meeting organizing committee realm and traversed through COVID through that time, which was interesting, pivoting to a virtual platform and doing all that. But, it allowed me to develop a ton of skills that then I have brought into my career as well. And then became an advocate for membership, especially trying to increase the representation of our members globally and across professions, and then the board of directors, and now as president. So I was pretty psyched when I got to, work with people on the board of directors and then realize that I get to, continue some of the strategic work that people have done before us. Just continue to hopefully make IPSS even more global and accessible.
That is just brilliant, and the way you phrase that you got to be a sponge, but then you kind of transitioned and realized you have so much value to add, and I think now you're gonna be that on the other end of that conversation where someone's gonna be fangirling you as they talk to you and like, "Oh my gosh, I've read her paper." So, it's really cool to hear you give that analogy. Very cool to kind of hear both of your journeys as you've gotten to this place and the growth that it took, but also the effort you put in to really connect with people in the society and help it grow and think about how can it get better. And I heard you say, Brittany, a little bit about inclusivity. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about that and what your thoughts are around that as you go into this future year as the president.
Yeah, I'd say that that's probably the main thing when I was nominated that I really focused on was that's the thing that I think we all can benefit from, and our outcomes in simulation education can benefit from as well. Is just larger diversity of perspectives um, across so many different intersectional identities. Thinking about like Rana said, like her research team that she's collaborated with were people from all different cultural backgrounds and how much value that adds to the work that they were able to do together. And so that is just one example. Then, I've had the pleasure of publishing and doing a lot of work with you, Simreen. And I think that we have found that our different backgrounds, whether it be a nursing lens, physician lens, or Muslim and agnostic, or whatever the lens might be, adds to the value of what we're able to come up with together. So I noticed when I was early days in as a member of IPSS that there were things that I, you know, wanted to give feedback on that just didn't land well with me. And I felt comfortable because people were open, which I think is unique with IPSS. There's a lot of societies I've been a part of where people can get really defensive right off the bat. But honestly, anytime I've had a conversation that some would label maybe as like a difficult conversation, um, it's gone well because people want to learn. And I think as educators, kind of as our baseline, whatever our background might be, we want things to get better. And if that means we have to grow and learn something new, then that's exactly what we're going to do. Is what we're expecting of the people we create curriculum for. So, yeah, I think that that's my hope with my time on the board and my time as president is just do everything to embed equity into like the daily work of the society, but then also like the actionable outcomes that the society brings. How can we make it more accessible? How can we make it actually have measurable outcomes for people that we touch?
I think that's really incredible. I particularly what resonates, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this, Rana, too, in your experience, is that this society is very unique in being able to not just sit down with folks that have done incredible work in specific areas of simulation and healthcare and pediatrics, but also that all of those folks have been welcoming and then open to feedback. I think this society has continued to grow and improve for that reason.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Sumrine, agree with Brittany's observations throughout her journey with IPSS. I think it is a unique society because it grew in a very organic way. It started off with very few people who had the right idea in mind, and then they just kind of reached out to people who are curious, to people who want to educate, and people who are not only open to feedback, but open to giving feedback. As Brittany said, it's not always easy to give feedback. We think that it's not easy sometimes to receive it. It's also not easy to give it. I mean, so much so that we ask clinicians to actually give feedback to their trainees, and we ask trainees to ask for the feedback from, their educators. And I think with IPSS, the society itself attracts people who value, um, you know, open-mindedness, giving feedback, working throughout the spectrum of healthcare, not only like with physicians with each other. Um, but this also creates a challenge because you don't want to be preaching to the choir, right? Like you need to make efforts to find people out there who might not know about IPSS or who know of IPSS but don't know how to join it, cannot afford it, are concerned that they might not be represented or heard. So there's always a challenge to sort of like continue to really focus in that direction, no matter what the overarching themes of each conference every year is.
Yeah, that is such an important point. Giving feedback is also not easy. You reminded me where I work now, they actually put up signs that said "Just ask and just tell," and I was like, we need a sign to like remind people to give feedback and receive feedback. So, that is a huge part of this society that makes it very unique. And I love that you highlighted just all of the ways we've deliberately thought about how can we be inclusive, even thinking about there might be folks that can't afford it, there might be folks who don't see themselves represented, and so how do we encourage them to get involved, to increase their representation, like all of those different pieces, because if you don't think about them deliberately, then they get missed.
I mean,
Yeah, I think
despite
that's
all the effort that we're doing, um, I mean, the I for IPSS stands for international, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
this is something that comes up at every board meeting is
Yeah,
how we can accommodate people's timing,
yeah,
different time zones. How can we accommodate people who are coming from low middle income countries? And we need more of those. Like, I wish we had like an open budget and we can just invite everyone from
yeah.
everywhere. But we need definitely more representation from countries that are not represented quite yet on IPSS.
Agree. And I think countries that aren't represented and all the various intersectional identities as well. We mentioned some, we talked about different professions as well, across the healthcare professions. And it's been really cool even to see our board be diverse in that sense and be deliberate about wanting to be diverse in that sense. Having a child life specialist, having nursing physicians, allied health professionals, having social workers, having that a broader vision of who is going to help move this forward in a way that is inclusive, because that's how, to your point, Brittany, that ties to better outcomes. It ties to better patient care and better outcomes when we can
Hmm.
get all of those different perspectives at the table collaboratively. I love that. So, kind of thinking about all of those pieces in y'all's journeys to here, in your leadership positions, what are you most excited about as you go into this year and the next year, for the society and for its members?
Well, honestly, I think expanding members is one of the things I'm most excited about because it's selfishly, it's also making me feel like I belong even more with every like the global aspect of IPSS was what attracted me to it because I feel like the first time I came when I went to the conference in Amsterdam, I saw somebody who had reworked a low fidelity mannequin for a pericardiocentesis task trainer, and it was like a mannequin that was it was broken, it was busted, it was going to be thrown out. And they figured out with like $5 worth of supplies how to create a reusable like task trainer. And I remember they were presenting, there was a research team from Ireland, and I was like, this is so cool. I can immediately take that back and help people that I intersect with in my institution, and that's so valuable. And this last conference in Denver, I saw another task trainer that was like less than $1 worth of supplies. It was like literally based on a sponge by Adil Khatri, and like it's just so cool to see people be innovative and know that those ideas are being shared on a global scale because healthcare, no matter where you are, is kind of broken. I don't care what system
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
in, you probably have challenges with staffing or budget or outcomes, health inequities, what have you. And so I especially love when people are creative with resource management or operationalizing things, partnering with their community. And I feel like what Rana just talked about of making the I a little more present, making our
Mhm.
society more international is going
Mhm.
to increase the creativity and the innovation of those networking opportunities because somebody who's created that pericardiocentesis task trainer might spur the idea of somebody else creating a task trainer that's for something else that's a little more that's tweaked. So I think that membership is what I'm most excited about, and things like this podcast and our IPSS Academy that is launching for really more accessible training for simulationists. Those are also things that I believe in as like accessibility, right? Having these resources be accessible, affordable for people across our members or future members.
I love that. Yeah, I think all the opportunities that are coming up with the society that you all have worked on as the leaders and the board has worked on, I'm really excited about the IPS Academy and just making things accessible. This podcast, I'm really excited to have this launch and get out there. So, Rana, what about you?
I just want to, I mean, I would like to practically, hopefully, continue what Brittany has started and what she is planning on continuing as well, because I think we have a lot of work to do on that field. I mean, people who are creating this $5 part-task trainer need to know that they shouldn't be embarrassed when they present something like that
Mhm.
at
Mhm.
conferences in North America. They should be proud of these things because honestly, the science in when it comes to these part-task trainers has not shown that high fidelity is superior to low fidelity. So if we don't have the resources, I think we can still achieve excellent education. So people need to broadcast that. Um, and what I'm hoping to also do is connect more with potentially like international sites. So have IPSS go to them if they cannot go to IPSS. So, replicate what we have done with PD stars in India, but in many other countries, hopefully. I know Brittany has started some work with Argentina that, we are all supportive of. And I don't see why this cannot be replicated in more countries. So have IPSS be helping out other efforts, other international efforts, if they cannot necessarily be present at our conferences, but not only helping out, having IPSS be represented and sort of like, weighing in on the science and the education and potentially the research.
That's really cool. I think what people can't see as we're recording this is just all the head nodding that's happening between all of us as we listen to each other. And I think that just highlights one of the other pieces about this society is that there's this continuity. There's this, let's do something, and then it ends when the next person comes on board. So it's been really cool to hear from both of you together as you work together throughout this year, and then that work continues into the next year, and not only continues but grows. And so I'd love to hear how you both feel about working together into this year and into the next.
Super excited.
Yeah, it's kind of the dream. I mean, honestly, like I said earlier, I was I guess what was the word that Serene used, fangirl. I loved reading Rana's publications, and I'd seen her present at previous conferences, and so then when we got to be on the board together, I was like, all right. So tell me if you're interested in being president because you should definitely we would like to nominate you to run for this next role. And it's nice because we have a lot of shared values when it comes to how we see IPSS as this like good force for the world and how it can grow and get better because that's we can't just be stagnant. So yeah, it's pretty wonderful. I feel like a true partner to be like, I mean, the whole board's wonderful, really, all of the perspectives, but it's nice to brainstorm with Rana or think about, how are we going to overcome a barrier that's come up or something. So pretty great.
Yeah. Yeah. Ditto. Thank you, Brittany. I really feel the same. I learned so much from you. I will continue to learn, and from you, Samreen. Um, you know, I think I am somewhat privileged because I come now from a low middle income country, so I kind of understand, how things function there and what are the resources or lack thereof. Um, but I really give it to you because you had to learn and understand what it takes for people who are underrepresented and come from other countries, and which I think takes more effort than someone who happened just to be in that environment. So I will continue to learn from you. Thank you. I'm so looking forward, for these next couple of years, and hopefully we will, as we transition out of our leadership roles, we will leave IPSS in a much better place.
Agreed.
I love that. We're all learning from each other. I'm really humbled to learn from both of you as well. So, as we close out this episode, anything else that we haven't covered or anything else either of you would like to share?
I think I'd just like to say if anybody's feeling like, oh, I don't know if this is my community, come try it out. Come be a participant, like Rana said.
Yeah.
Come meet some folks because I've found that it's one of the most welcoming places and really a true place where you can grow and learn from others no matter what stage you are in your career. So yeah, I would just say come join us.
Yeah, totally. And give us feedback. We actually
Yeah.
take the feedback of participants very seriously. And, I have yet to meet someone who has been at IPSS who said like they didn't like it, they didn't learn anything. I mean, again, I'm biased, obviously, but to me, it's the perfect size conference with the perfect, cadence, perfect amount of material presented, a lot of resources on the website, and a lot of people thinking about how to make this more accessible to everyone.
Love it. Love it. So the big message is if you're not a member, become a member. If you haven't come to IPSSW or IPSSV, the virtual conference we put on, check our website out and join either or both. So, well, thank you both
And if you
for
can't
joining us.
afford this, let us know.
Yes, yes. And open to feedback and let us know. Yeah. And if you can't afford it, we will find a way to get you there.
Mhm.
So I love that. All right. Well, thank you both for joining me. And we will continue to look for all the things that are to come from your great leadership.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the IPSS podcast. A special thanks to our behind the scenes producer, the talented Denish Kumar, and to the Starship Foundation for providing the equipment that makes this podcast possible. Join us next time.